you.
Kyle from Illinois wants to know why the atheist didn't work for him. It's actually why the atheism didn't work for him. I thought this dude had a shitty job interview and like some atheist refused. Let's talk to Kyle. Kyle, you're on the line with Forrest and Aaron. How are you doing?
What up?
Hello, how are you?
Good evening.
And well, I'm sure you remember me.
I was wondering, this is you're the one you were a theist for a while, and then you told us that you were dropping all that, and now you're calling back as a theist, and you're saying the atheism didn't work for you. What happened?
Man, well, some things that you said got me questioning on the other side. Obviously, I love you guys, so I don't want to argue. But you had said whenever I called you, and you said before we ended the call with you and Aaron, that if he just told me things that I would believe him. And then that kind of got me feeling a little gullible with just taking your word for everything. So that's really what started my journey on the journey back to theism.
Okay, so I think it's good for you to not just take our word for everything. Like you shouldn't do that with anybody. So like, what happened to convince you that theism is that a God exists? Like, which God do you believe in, first of all?
Jesus Christ, God.
Okay, so you're going back to Christianity. I don't remember the details of all of our calls. But like, why, if it sounds to me like what you're saying is that you didn't want to just believe us just to believe us. So you decided to just believe something else to just believe that. Like, you should not just believe us just because we said anything. Like, you should fact check us. But like, what are you doing over here now to where like this seems more reasonable? What's going on?
Because I know that the God thing cannot be proven or disproven, and I feel like it does take just accepting experiences and is it true that scientific proof is not proof in and of itself?
So the way that maybe Aaron will have a different way of saying this, but like the way that I like to say it is that all models are wrong, all theories are wrong, some of them are useful. So forgive me if I've already said this to you. I don't know, I can't remember, but like the Earth is what the Earth looks like. Every single map is wrong. Even the most amazing map that we have with satellite images and shit, the resolution's bad, the coastlines make no sense. Like, excuse me, real burpish. There's a lot of problems with every single map. Every map is an issue. But you want to use a map to understand certain things about the surface of the planet. Similarly, every scientific theory and model that we have is just a reflection of reality. Reality is what reality looks like. And all we're doing is gathering data and putting it together in a model. And if that model is testable and predictive and functional, then we can say, all right, this is probably pretty close to what reality looks like. And if we want to learn about reality, this is a good description of it, just like a map is a good description of Earth. It's in science, you'll hear anybody say that anything's ever been proven. Because that is to say that we have all the evidence necessary, we have all the answers, we have all the information we could possibly need, and there's no way we could ever be wrong. And that makes no sense. We could always be wrong. There could always be something that comes up. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Now, and then the second part is like, before I started calling the show, I was willing to accept it as a whole. I feel like when I started calling the show, I turned into a cherry picking asshole to people, man. Like, I feel like I'm an extremist no matter which way I go. And I don't know. It's just like, I'm going to either be cherry picking because, you know, people will try to share their faith with you. And then you guys say, well, don't you know the Old Testament talks about fucking this and that and how God is a monster and all this stuff.
But only if somebody's saying that the Bible is literally true. If somebody's calling in to say the Bible is actually literally true and the God of the Bible is good, well, those two things are incompatible. If the God of the Bible is real, then the God of the Bible is not good. And so that's not cherry picking. That's like, you know, if we're talking about like, you know, talk about Hitler. Oh, Hitler built some bridges. Hitler got a lot of medals for like community service. Hitler did a lot of good infrastructure work in his community. but we can still say like, oh, also there was the whole Holocaust thing. He's a dick, right? That's not cherry picking. That's just taking the whole story together. And it's the same thing with the Bible. You're not cherry picking by saying, hey, here's some issues. It would be cherry picking for you to go through the Bible and find one verse where Jesus said, love your neighbor, and say, okay, this is now a good book. That would be cherry picking.
Okay. Now, wouldn't it be cherry picking to also be like, well, it says this, so therefore he's not good?
If he does something sufficiently evil, then yeah, you can kind of paint his whole character as evil. So like, if
At the very
somebody,
least, the idea that God is all good would be incompatible with anything not good in the Holy Book.
truth, yeah, absolutely, yeah. So that's a major thing. But to call God actually bad, like then you would need something really extreme. Like if, for example, he were to have flooded the whole world, that's a pretty bad thing to do. And so like to to paint somebody's whole character as bad, then yeah, you'd have to find something sufficiently bad. And I think that there are several parts of the Bible that paint him as sufficiently bad, especially when taken as a whole. So it sounds to me like, just from what you're saying, and maybe you have something else to say, and I don't want to cut you off, but like it sounds to me like somebody else talked to you about this and kind of persuaded you back in the other direction. Is that what's happening? Or did you just think it out a little bit more and didn't like where you were?
Now, I have been talking to people because I try to keep an open mind.
Sure.
Whether I practice Christianity or not, I'm going to try to be the best version of myself I can be, if that makes sense.
That's good.
And man, it's just like transgender. We don't know what's coming after this life. It could be nothing. It could be something. I'm not the one to fucking judge what people want to do in life. You know what I mean? So
you were listening to that last call, Maureen.
Yes, I felt that so strongly, man. Relatable, and like I feel like you can come to the conclusion that the message of what the Bible would call the gospel is a message of love in and of itself, and I just feel like, man, I had a hope, I had a meaning, I had a purpose, and you know, if that makes me satisfied in life, I kind of look at it, how wrong can it really be in that sense?
Sure.
If you're not looking for proof and stuff, and
yeah,
and I don't have the, and just add in, I don't have the brain that you guys have to even dive in full force with atheism.
I don't think it takes a lot of, like, it's not a brain thing. Like Aaron and I are scientists, so we care about. But like, just to be an atheist, it just means that you don't believe in a God claim. And so like doesn't take anything beyond just, incredulity. So like, here's the thing, man, is that like the reason why I'm so anti-religion, one of the reasons, is because if somebody can make you believe absurdities, they can make you commit atrocities. So I care about what you believe, even if it's just something super benign that you don't like, you're not hurting anybody. It's just your personal belief that gives your life some meaning and things. I still say that it's super risky and not worth it. And it still harms you as an individual, especially the teachings of Christianity, I think really, really destroy someone's self-esteem and someone's self-worth and someone's understanding of love and justice. I think that these teachings are incompatible with all of those things. So like, that's why I care about those things. Yeah. Oh God. Yeah, dude. And so like, that's why I care about those things for you. And on top of that, I care that it's not real. So like, while I can totally understand what you're saying, like, it doesn't really matter if it's real or not. It matters if it does something for me. What I want to impress upon you is just that, like, whether or not it is meaningful, whether or not it is useful, whether or not it gives you hope or helps you sleep at night, whether or not it helps someone out of a shitty situation, whether or not it holds society together, like, none of these things make it true. And if you don't care about whether or not what you believe is true, that's fine. That's a totally different conversation. I still think what you're believing is harmful. And so that's where I'm coming from for you. And if you don't see it that way, that's okay. That's kind of where I'm at now with this. I want to understand where you're at,
For sure. I just wanted to call because I don't know. I was kind of back and forth there for a little bit.
Well, you know what? A lot of people who are deconstructing their religion will flip flop quite a lot in there, and it doesn't. Who knows what side you're going to land on? You may in the next few weeks decide you're an atheist again, and then decide you're a theist again, and who knows how many times that'll go. And if these are new ideas to you, it may be a type of thing where you're kind of pulled back and forth depending on whether you're watching us or you're watching, whatever creationist or preacher or whatever like that. And okay, well, that's actually a good argument. And I'm not saying you're gullible. I'm saying that like you hear a good argument and you're like, fuck, man, I got to grapple with that. Maybe I should call myself this for a minute. And then you hear another good argument from the other side and you're like, fuck, I got to go think about this for a while. That's all totally normal.
Yeah.
But like,
now, can I ask you something? I heard Christopher Hitchin say in his last interview.
Yeah.
I feel like whenever, if you really do know your time is about to go, you really do start to think about things. And he had said something if there is a God, I hope that he would look at the condition of my heart. If there is a God, I'm just like, man, and then that's where I come to mind that it really does just change things whenever you really do have a deathbed that your time is coming.
That's why I try to think about death. One of the many reasons why I think about death quite a bit. I try to remember my death at all times, because I don't want to be caught off guard when it comes. I want to have the time now in my life to really think about what's important and where I'm at, and like what good am I doing in the world, and also to make sure that I have time to grieve and fear my own loss, so that when that time comes, it's not so traumatic. And like, I remember Hitchens also said, he was saying like, I hope that no one holds it against me if out of fear or pain at the very end, I decide I'm a Christian all of a sudden, because I'm just so scared or in so much pain or so whatever because that's when people do it sometimes. And so like,
can I ask?
That's
okay.
I was just gonna say that's what I value more, is that when he was the most himself, when he was really thinking clearly and was as comfortable as he could have been in his final days, that's what he wanted people to think about him, is that like, even if I relent in the very end, please understand it's not me talking, it's the fear, it's the pain, it's something else. Who he really is at his core is somebody who is recalcitrant to the very end, and that's who I want to be too.
Yeah. Now, do you have kids?
No.
Okay. All right. Then I was just gonna ask a curiosity question.
I don't, but I know what I can do a thought experiment with you about it if you want to ask one. Like if you have a curiosity question.
Yeah, if you had kids grown up and they on their own, because you obviously would not push any God on them. If they came to you and was like, "Hey, I experienced this and I think it's God," would you try to deter them from it?
I would ask, so I don't have children, but my wife used to be Christian. And I love her very much. And so like I can kind of relate a little bit.
Gotcha.
I would give them the respect to talk it out and say, okay, I need you to actually convince me that this is real, because people have what they believe to be supernatural experiences all the time, and they're not supernatural in the end of the day. And confirmation bias exists, and here's all these logical fallacies that exist that you might not know you're committing. And also, even if you can prove to me that you have no explanation, I don't know isn't the same as magic. You have to actually positively prove to me that this is a magical thing. I would give them the same amount of respect that I give you, Kyle, in terms of like not treating you like you're stupid and saying, "Oh well, yeah, maybe. Who knows? It's magic, hooray!" I would ask you to tell me about it, prove it to me, and convince me, and meet me as an equal, not as somebody who's gonna like placate you and then talk shit behind your back.
Yeah. Now, it seems like every guest or every host on the show has a different definition for faith. Is there like a baseline definition for what faith is?
I don't.
That everybody agrees on.
I don't.
Oh, definitely not
because
that.
there's
especially when you say
What do you got?
everybody, because, well, first off, in general, definitions are um, difficult, to put it mildly. Uh, we were having that point as well earlier, where we were talking about like the definition of religion or the definition of men and women or things like that. You realize, hey, these are just groupings that kind of sort of go together in what we have put together culturally, and realize there's a lot of edge cases or a lot of things that we realize it's just kind of a cobbled together category. And when it comes to the word faith, because it has a connotation that um, some believers don't like because it makes it sound like they're gullible or unreasonable, they definitely don't like to say faith as if it's like, oh, I'm believing something despite the evidence or against the evidence, because that sounds irrational. That they want to say the faith is reasonable, and then when you ask what that is, how is it actually different than just normal, reason-based thinking? It's unclear. So it gets even harder when people say, well, it means this in some context, but the way I use it can't have that negative context, so it can't mean the bad thing.
Right. Yeah, I
Right.
like the description of faith as just belief without evidence or in spite of evidence. I think that's fine, but I also understand there are colloquial definitions about just like like belief in what you're about to do or in the outcome of a scenario that you haven't seen yet. Belief in things unseen. Belief in Martin Luther King said belief is faith is taking the first step before you see the whole staircase or something like that. Um, I know for sure that like religion doesn't have a solid definition. But that is to say, these things do have colloquial definitions. They have ways that we use them in common parlance that you and I would know what we're talking about. And I think that's good enough for me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I got you. I guess just at the end of the day, that I guess you can call it a personal experience. I've just accepted it that it is a something that I can't explain, and I feel like we call that God. And I just feel like
Well,
I feel like I'm a better person. And I guess you could call it religion, got with God, or whatever you want to call it.
okay. If you're a better person with it, what is it about it that makes you better?
Because it allows me to uplift people. It might not give me an explanation for everything, but it does give me an answer for everything. And I won't say it makes me comfortable, because sharing the whole Jesus died for you, he rose again, and all of that, that is an uncomfortable message to spread.
I
So
think
I
it's a
wouldn't
very
say I
cruel
do
one
it
to
out.
spread.
What'd you tell her to each their own on the you guys trying to always figure out the beginning of the universe?
Yeah, yeah.
Kind of, that's
That's yeah.
how I look
So,
at that.
sure, but like even the I think what you're describing here is the power of placebo. Like it is very comforting to have an answer, even if it's not the right answer. And like I guess the biggest thing for me, Kyle, is like you don't have to care about science and you don't have to care about the beginning of the universe and anything like that. Do you care whether or not what you believe is true?
Now, what if I say that yes, I care, but I also do feel like I have enough personal evidence to say that it is true.
That's fine. If that's your answer, then that's fine. Then my next question is the evidence that you have for this belief in Christianity, is it the same kind of evidence that you would be able to accept any other thing for? Like if I were to come to you with talking about, pick your favorite Big Bang, evolution, abiogenesis, whatever, and give you the same kind of evidence that you're giving me for Christianity or that has convinced you of Christianity, would that be good enough for you to believe those things?
Um, Now you said, would the evidence that I have for this be enough for me to believe anything else, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
I guess that would depend on the topic.
Okay, that should be an issue for you. Like that's you started this call talking about how you didn't want to be gullible and you didn't want to just believe anything that just somebody just said to you. That's what you're doing, is believing just anything that you want. If
Well,
you care about
believing
whether or not things are true,
believing
you should care about having evidence for them, and that evidence should be something that's like empirical.
right, but if you count personal experience as evidence, that does hold some value on a personal level.
Sure, in some way, yeah, but it's the caliber of the I guess, let me rephrase it this way. What I actually, I'll agree with what you said. Depending on what you're talking about, different levels of evidence could be a thing. If I told you that I like pineapple on pizza, I don't need to sit down and eat a whole pie in front of you to prove it to you. You can take that as a thing based on personal experience from me. You know what I mean? If I tell you
Yeah.
that the moon is a spaceship run by gophers, you should want more than me saying I saw something on the moon that looked a lot like a gopher and it kind of just felt that way, right? Like it shouldn't, that you would need some serious evidence for it. So what you're talking about here isn't just a preference. You're talking about a scientific claim about the nature of the universe, about souls, about eternal damnation, about a human sacrifice 2,000 years ago that created a contract written in divine blood to which all people are bound. That's a lot of shit, Kyle. That's a lot of claims to make based on I feel it or I had a personal experience.
But you're
And you do
also
also
not
want to
willing
balance that, Kyle, with the other flip side of that. Your personal experience is contrary to the personal experience of billions of other people. So the same
True.
kind of evidence, opposite conclusion, that should at least make you think that that kind of evidence ought not to be persuasive, because it would make you flip every single person you talk to who has a very different kind of experience about these things.
Yeah.
Okay, now you guys will never make the claim that the resurrection never happened, right?
That it never happened?
Yeah, you guys will not make that claim that it never happened, right?
I will make the claim that I have no good reason to believe it ever did. So like I don't.
Would you ever say that?
I don't like. I would say it's difficult because, like, yeah, I probably would say that didn't happen, but I'm not saying like for sure I was there and I measured it and so in the same way I would never say, you know, I don't know, pick your favorite. Abraham Lincoln actually wasn't assassinated, and he moved to Colombia and started a Coca-Cola farm or something. You know, I don't know. Like those are things that would require a lot of evidence, and I have evidence in the contrary. So, like, did that happen? I'm going to say no, but in the same way that I would speak in scientific terms, there's no for sure definite answer. I could always be wrong, but everything is pointing in this one direction. So, similarly with that, maybe some guy actually rose from the dead after 3 days, but I have no reason to believe that's true. I have plenty of evidence to say that that sort of thing is impossible and never happens ever. So there's that. And also, even if you were to prove to me that he did actually raise from the dead, that doesn't tell me anything about whether or not he's the son of a god, or if there is a god to be a son of, or if he healed the blind, or made the cripple walk, or walked on water, or any of the other, turned water to wine. All of those things require their own independent evidence for every single one of those claims. So, like, that's what I would say no, but I don't want you to take it as me just saying absolutely not, no, not ever possible. No, it's so unbelievably tiny of a chance, so ridiculously improbable. It makes no sense to believe it, is what I would say. But that's really fucking pedantic and shitty to say.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say it that way.
And if I can throw some New Testament study stuff on top of that, because I call myself an advanced dilettante when it comes to biblical studies.
Nice words.
First off, I try. So first off, prior probability that person comes back from the dead. So there's been about 100 billion humans. They've all stayed dead. So prior probability that a given human comes back from the dead is already 1 in 100 billion, which is way lower chances of winning several lotteries. So that's already low prior. So you're going to need not just evidence, you're going to need amazing evidence. You're going to need damn good evidence. You're going to need literal Jesus Christ coming down from the sky, slapping you in the face and telling me, of course I came back from the dead. I'm right in front of you, dog. And he has to say it exactly that way. He has to say dog, just like that. Now, in reality, what's the evidence we have? Stories that come decades later, and our earliest source only got to know Jesus by having visions. And when he talks about his visions, we can tell that ultimately he's not touching reality, because he talks about going up to the third heaven and being in paradise there. And we know the structure of outer space, and it's not filled with gardens, as Paul was describing in 2 Corinthians chapter 12. So our earliest source for Jesus is a guy who had visions, and he had visions about things that we know are not true. So that really should take away the probability that this is going to be a cult that's giving us hard facts about what happened in roughly 33 AD. And if you want to talk even more stuff when it comes to what we can and can't say about Jesus, or if there even was historical Jesus, that would probably have to be its own separate call.
Okay, now what do you guys make of like the Dead Sea Scrolls and all that? All of that.
They're the oldest scraps of the Old Testament that we have access to. They're still centuries, if not a millennia, after some of the stories that are in there. So, like, the oldest scraps from the Dead Sea Scrolls is 2nd century BC. Maybe some of it goes to 3rd century, but the Exodus story, roughly, well, depending on what numbers you use, it's either in the 13th century BC or the 16th century BC. The numbers are kind of messed up, but nonetheless, that's 1,000 years or more further back in time than the oldest scrap of any version of the Exodus story in the Dead Sea Scrolls. So they don't really tell us that much. Now, conversely, they claim that, oh, the Dead Sea Scrolls show that the Bible has been miraculously preserved, that there is like no difference between what we see in the Dead Sea Scrolls and we see 1,000 years later in the Masoretic text. That's actually complete BS. There are thousands of differences between those various manuscripts, and we even see rewritings of the stories from Genesis and elsewhere. So basically, we see a lot of changes, a whole lot of changes. I was just looking at this the other day because I'm a weirdo. I was looking at the book of Jeremiah, who's supposed to be this collection of prophecies from Jeremiah, and there are all these layers of redaction that have happened to it. There's like, all right, so here are the things that were inserted by the same person who wrote Deuteronomy and what's called the Deuteronostic history. So Joshua, Judges, 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Samuel. That's all basically like one group of scribes usually ascribed to, or at least the final redactors of that. They also seem to have gone into Jeremiah and said, he should have said this too. And then we also see there's big differences between the oldest Greek copies we have and the version we see in Hebrew, where the Hebrew in a lot of places is a whole lot longer, sometimes like 30% more material in the Hebrew than in the Greek. So it's like, hey, there's all sorts of additions to a book of prophecies. So what actually goes back to the original Jeremiah is, at least somewhat debatable. And that's just the stuff we can actually detect because we have the manuscript evidence. It's what we would call, at best, a mess.
Yeah, yeah. I think life's a mess. But I will go ahead and let you guys go. I just want to end it by saying I want to thank you for helping me get all the questions out of my system. I no longer believe out of fear. I believe by choice. So I do appreciate you and that deconstruction part of my journey.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, Kyle. And like, the fact of the matter is, I still think that your beliefs are wrong, and I think that they are hurting you and could potentially hurt others. And so I hope you don't have to. I'm never going to force you to, but I hope you call in and talk to us about why you believe what you believe now, and see if we can't find some ground. And I just to revisit what we said at the beginning of the call, like, I hope you don't ever believe anything that Aaron and I or anybody else says just because we said it. I hope we never made you feel gullible. I think you believed when we first spoke for the same reason that millions of people believe. And now you believe for
Right.
reasons that a lot fewer people believe, which is cooler, but still not acceptable to me anyway. So
Right.
I think personally that deconstructing fully and getting rid of these beliefs, I think it would leave you better off, although it would be a difficult journey. and it sounds like you're taking a more comfortable path for something that you think is a better outcome. And I'm not going to shame you for that, but I do think that if you want to, I think you could go a lot farther with it and be a lot happier in the long run. And I am always going to be here to help get you there if you want.
Well, I appreciate you.
I appreciate you, Kyle. Have an awesome rest of your day, man, and be well.
Have a good night, guys.
Take care.
Good night, Kyle.
Well, that makes me sad. Kyle's a really nice guy, and we thought we but at the end of the day, like I said at the beginning, like what Kyle's doing right now is totally normal. It happens a lot when people become atheists. They sometimes go back to original belief for different reasons because it's more comfortable to be there. And as much as that sucks, Kyle's a good person, and I'm happy he's around, and I hope someday we can convince him.
Hey, come on, man. We gotta promote that clip we all just watched.
Well, I'd rather not shill.
Okay, well, Daddy has a $2,000 a month red oak habit, and I am your production god, and you will shill when I tell you to shill. Dance for me, baby.
Go, God damn it. Why did my life come to this? Go to patreon.com/call-the-line and donate. God damn it.
This is what happens when we let live chatters write our scripts.